Ezra Thornton's hands were shaking when he lifted the dying woman from the blood-soaked straw. 8 years since he'd held another human being. 8 years since his daughter had taken her last breath in these same arms. He'd promised himself never again. Never again would he let someone close enough to destroy him. But her eyes opened dark, as river stones fierce as wildfire, and she whispered one word that would shatter every wall he'd built. Please. If you want to see how this broken man's life changes forever, subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. The screaming started just after midnight. Ezra Thornton sat bolt upright in his bed, heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped animal. For one terrible moment, he was back in that burning cabin 8 years ago, his daughter's cries cutting through smoke and flame. Then silence. Just the wind. Just his own ragged breathing. He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes until he saw stars. "Ain't real," he muttered. "Ain't nothing but memories." But then it came again. Not a scream this time, but a wet, rattling gasp from somewhere outside. Something dying. Something in pain. His barn. Ezra's feet hit the cold floor before his mind caught up with his body. He grabbed the lantern from the table, fumbled with matches 3 times before the wick caught flame. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. They never did anymore, not when the nightmares came. The smart thing would be to bar the door. Wait until morning. Let whatever creature had crawled into his barn finish dying in peace. 8 years ago, he would have done exactly that. But 8 years ago, he'd been a different man. A man with a wife, a daughter, a reason to protect himself. Now he had nothing left worth protecting. The barn door hung open. Ezra always latched it. Always. The realization sent ice down his spine as he stepped into the darkness, lantern held high, casting wild shadows across empty stalls and stacked hay. "Who's there?" His voice came out rough, unused. He couldn't remember the last time he'd spoken to another living soul. 3 weeks 4. The widow Brennan had come by with a pie he didn't want, asked questions he couldn't answer, left looking at him like he was something to be pitied. He hated that look. "I got a rifle," he lied. "The rifle was in the cabin unloaded, probably rusted by now. Show yourself." Nothing. Then movement. In the corner behind the grain sacks. A sound like fabric dragging across straw. Ezra moved closer, lantern trembling in his grip. The light caught something dark pooling on the ground. Too much of it. Too thick. Blood. And there, crumpled against the wall like a broken doll, lay a woman. Her hair spilled across her shoulders, black as crow feathers. Her clothing leather, adorned with intricate beadwork, was soaked through with crimson. A gash ran from her shoulder to her ribs, deep enough that Ezra could see the white gleam of bone. Apache. The word hit him like a physical blow. He knew the tensions that simmered across the territory. Knew the stories. Knew what happened to white men who got involved in Indian affairs. He should walk away, saddle his horse, ride to the nearest outpost, and let someone else handle this. But then her eyes opened. Dark as river stones. Fierce as wildfire. They locked onto his with an intensity that froze him where he stood. No fear in those eyes. No pleading. Just a silent assessment measuring whether he was worth the effort of staying conscious. Her lips moved. Words in a language he didn't understand flowed out weak but deliberate. "I don't..." Ezra's throat closed. "I can't understand you." She tried again, frustration flickering across her face. Then, with visible effort, she switched to English. Heavily accented, but clear enough. "They... come. Soon. Who's coming? Bad men." Her hand clutched at her wounded side. "Hunting me." Ezra's mind raced. "What did you do?" Something shifted in her expression. Pride, maybe. Or defiance. "I said no." 3 words. But Ezra understood more than she'd spoken. A woman didn't end up bleeding in a stranger's barn for saying yes to anything. Please. The word came out as barely a whisper. Please, help. His daughter had said the same thing. Smoke filling her lungs, flames eating through the walls, her tiny hands reaching for him. Please, Papa. Please help. He'd failed her. He couldn't fail again. All right. The word escaped before he could stop it. All right, I'll help you, but you gotta tell me what I'm dealing with. 3 men, maybe 4. Her breath came in short, painful gasps. Warriors. From my people. Your own people did this to you. Her jaw tightened. Not my people. His people. The man I was supposed to marry. Ezra stared at her. An arranged marriage. A runaway bride. Warriors hunting her down like an animal. This wasn't just dangerous, it was the kind of situation that got men killed in ways that made death seem like mercy. What's your name? Najoni. A pause. My mother called me Clara. Clara. He tested the name. I'm Ezra. Ezra Thornton. Ezra. She repeated it slowly, like she was memorizing the shape of it. You are kind man or stupid man. Despite everything, a sound escaped him. Not quite a laugh, he'd forgotten how those worked, but close. Reckon I'm about to find out. He set down the lantern and knelt beside her, examining the wound with eyes that had seen too much death already. The gash was bad but clean. No jagged edges, no signs of infection yet. A knife wound, he realized. Someone had tried to gut her, and she'd twisted away just in time. This is gonna hurt, he warned. Already hurts. It's gonna hurt worse. Her eyes met his, that fierce, measuring look again. I can take worse. He believed her. Ezra worked as quickly as he could, pressing clean cloth against the wound to slow the bleeding. She didn't make a sound. Not a whimper, not a gasp. Just her hand curling into a fist so tight, her knuckles went white, her jaw clenched against the scream she refused to release. 8 years ago, he'd cried out when he burned his palm on a cook stove. This woman was enduring something 10 times worse in perfect silence. Why'd they want you dead? He asked, partly to distract her, partly because he needed to know what was coming. This man you were supposed to marry, what happens when he finds out you ran? He loses face. Her voice was steady despite the pain. A woman rejecting him. In our way, it is great shame. He must bring me back, or kill you. Yes. And if someone's hiding you, her eyes flickered with something that might have been regret. They die too. Ezra's hand stilled on the bandage. Well, that's just wonderful. You can still walk away. She said it like she meant it, like she was giving him permission to save himself. I will not blame you. Little late for that, ain't it? No. She shook her head weakly. Leave me in the field. Tell them you found me already dead. They might believe. I ain't leaving you nowhere. The words came out harder than he intended. Clara Najoni stared at him with an expression he couldn't read. Why? It was a simple question. It deserved a simple answer. But the truth was complicated and painful and buried under 8 years of silence. Because I already let one woman die. Because I can't carry another ghost. Because you looked at me like I might actually be worth something. Because I ain't that kind of man, he said finally. Never was. Probably never will be. She studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. You are strange man, Ezra Thornton? So I've been told. The sound of horses echoed across the valley, distant but closing fast. Ezra's blood turned to ice. He grabbed the lantern and moved toward the barn door, peering out into the darkness. Moonlight caught the silhouettes of riders cresting the ridge. 3 of them, maybe 4, moving in a formation that spoke of hunters who knew exactly what they were tracking. "They found me." Clara's voice held no fear, just resignation. "How?" "Blood trail, probably. You left a path a blind man could follow." He turned back to her, his mind racing through possibilities. Hide her. That was the only option. But where the barn was the obvious place to search. The cabin was too exposed. The root cellar numbered too far. She couldn't walk, and carrying her would leave tracks. "Can you move?" "No." "Can you try?" Her eyes met his. In them, he saw something that looked almost like hope. "For you, I try." Ezra pulled her arm across his shoulders and lifted. She weighed almost nothing too light for a woman of her height, probably hadn't eaten properly in days. But she gasped when the movement pulled at her wound. "I'm sorry," he muttered. I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing." Her voice was tight with pain, but there was steel beneath it. "Move." He half-carried, half-dragged her deeper into the barn past the empty stalls to the back corner where he stored winter supplies. A tarp-covered pile of grain sacks formed a natural alcove. Not perfect, but it would have to do. Ezra laid her behind the sacks as gently as he could, then pulled the tarp down to create a makeshift curtain. In the darkness, she was nearly invisible. "Don't make a sound," he whispered. "No matter what happens, no matter what they say, you stay quiet, you hear me." Her hand shot out and gripped his wrist. The strength in her fingers surprised him. "If they find me." She pressed something into his palm. A small carved token, turquoise and bone. "Give this to my father. Tell him I chose my own path. Ain't nobody dying tonight." "Ezra." "I said no." He closed her fingers back around the token. "You hold on to this yourself. Give it to your father when you see him." The horses were closer now. He could hear voices carrying across the night air. Angry voices, demanding voices. Ezra took a deep breath and stepped out of the barn. 3 riders pulled up short in his yard. They wore no uniforms, no badges, just hard expressions and rifles that caught the moonlight like promises of violence. The lead rider was young, maybe 25, with the kind of face that might have been handsome before rage twisted it into something ugly. His clothing was finer than the others, marked with symbols that Ezra didn't recognize, but suspected meant authority. "You." The young man pointed at Ezra. "White man, you see woman come through here?" Ezra's throat tightened. Speaking to strangers. His worst nightmare made real. The words piled up behind his teeth, refusing to come out. "I asked you question." The rider's horse stamped impatiently. "Apache woman, wounded. She come this way." Ezra's voice cracked. His face burned with the familiar shame of being unable to function like a normal person. "I ain't." "He is simple." One of the other riders, older with scars on his face, spat into the dirt. "Look at him. Probably doesn't know what day it is." The young man studied Ezra with cold eyes. "You alone here?" Ezra managed a nod. "No woman, no one else?" Another nod. "We search your barn." It wasn't a question. The young man dismounted in one fluid motion, already moving toward the door that Ezra had carefully closed behind him. Panic seized Ezra's chest. His feet moved before his brain caught up, putting him between the warrior and the barn door. All 3 men went still. "You have something to hide." The young man's hand drifted to the knife at his belt. "Move aside, white man." Ezra's mouth opened. Nothing came out. His hands were shaking visibly now, his legs threatening to buckle. Every instinct screamed at him to step aside, to survive, to let them find her, and wash his hands of this impossible situation. But behind those grain sacks, a woman was holding her breath. A woman who'd chosen to die, rather than marry a man she didn't want. A woman who'd looked at him like he might actually be worth something. "Ain't," and he forced the word out, "ain't nothing in there. Just grain and horses." The young man stepped closer, close enough that Ezra could smell wood smoke and leather and something darker. Blood, maybe. Not his own. You lie. I ain't. I can smell her blood on you. Ezra's heart stopped. The warrior smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. You think I am fool. You think I cannot track my own bride. His bride. This was the man Najoni had been running from, the one who'd tried to gut her when she refused him. Something shifted in Ezra's chest. The fear didn't disappear, but it moved aside, making room for something older, something hotter, something that felt almost like the man he'd been before fire had taken everything. She ain't your bride. The words came out clear, steady, surprising even himself. What did you say? I said she ain't your bride. Ezra's hands had stopped shaking. A woman who runs from you, bleeds to get away from you, would rather die in a stranger's barn than marry you. That ain't no bride. That's a prisoner. The warrior's face contorted with rage. You know nothing, white man. I know what a man looks like when he can't handle being told no. Ezra stood his ground even as his heart hammered against his ribs. I know what kind of coward chases a wounded woman through the dark instead of letting her go. The knife came out so fast Ezra barely saw it move. Moonlight caught the blade as the warrior pressed it against his throat. Where is she? Go to hell. I will kill you. Then kill me. The words came from somewhere deep inside, somewhere Ezra had thought was dead. I already buried my wife, my daughter. You think I'm scared of dying? Something flickered in the warrior's eyes. Uncertainty, maybe. This wasn't how victims were supposed to behave. Dakota. The scarred rider spoke from his horse. The elders will not be pleased if you kill a white man. It will bring soldiers. Problems. I don't care about. Your father will care. The rider's voice hardened. Think, boy. She cannot have gone far. We continue the search at dawn. The young warrior Dakota held Ezra's gaze for a long, dangerous moment. Then slowly, he lowered the knife. This is not over. He spoke quietly enough that only Ezra could hear. I will find her, and when I do, I will make sure you watch what happens next. He mounted his horse and wheeled away without another word. The other riders followed their silhouettes disappearing over the ridge as quickly as they'd come. Ezra stood frozen in his yard, listening to the thunder of hooves fade into silence. His hands were shaking again. His throat felt raw where the knife had pressed, but she was still hidden, still safe. For now. He returned to the barn on legs that didn't quite feel like his own. When he pulled back the tarp, Najoni's eyes were open, watching him. You are crazy, man, she whispered. He would have killed you. Yeah, well. Ezra slumped against the grain sack, suddenly exhausted. Told you I was stupid. No. She reached out and touched his hand. The contact sent something like electricity through his skin. Not stupid. Brave. Ain't nothing brave about wanting to die. You did not want to die. Her fingers curled around his. You wanted her to live. There is difference. Ezra stared at their joined hands. He couldn't remember the last time someone had touched him with gentleness instead of pity. Who was she? Najoni asked softly. The woman you lost. The question hit him like a fist. He opened his mouth to deflect, to change the subject, to do what he always did when anyone got too close. But the words that came out surprised him. Martha. Her name was Martha, and our daughter... His voice broke. Our daughter was Grace. What happened? Fire. The single word contained an ocean of pain. Cabin caught fire in the night. I got Grace out, but she'd already breathed too much smoke. She died in my arms. And Martha? I couldn't get back to Martha. The roof collapsed before I could. He couldn't finish. Couldn't speak the words he'd never said aloud to anyone. Najoni's grip on his hand tightened. How long ago? 8 years. 8 years, 3 months, and 17 days. She was quiet for a moment. Then, you count the days. Every single one. You blame yourself. Who else is there to blame? The fire. I should have woken up sooner. Should have smelled the smoke. Should have moved faster, done something different. Anything. Ezra. Her voice cut through his spiral. Look at me. He did. Her dark eyes held no judgment, no pity, just understanding from someone who'd walked through their own private hell. I was supposed to marry when I was 16, she said. My father promised me to a war chief's son. Powerful alliance. Good for our people. She paused. I tried to run then too. They caught me, brought me back, said I would learn to accept. Did you? No. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. I learned to wait, to plan, to become strong enough that next time they would not catch me. And this time I made it to your barn. She squeezed his hand. This time a strange man with sad eyes decided I was worth protecting. I ain't much of a protector. You stood in front of a knife for me. She said it simply, like stating a fact. In my world, that means something. Ezra didn't know how to respond, so he did what he did best. He changed the subject. That wound needs proper tending. I got whiskey in the cabin, clean cloth. Can you stay awake while I fetch it? I can stay awake. Promise me. Her eyes met his. I promise. He left her there, hidden behind the grain sacks, and walked to his cabin on legs that felt steadier than they had in years. Something had shifted inside him, something that had been locked away since the night he'd buried 2 small graves in the meadow behind his property. For 8 years, he'd been waiting to die. But tonight, for the first time in 8 years, Ezra Thornton had a reason to live. He just had to figure out how to keep them both alive long enough to see the sunrise. The whiskey burned going down. Ezra let it, welcoming the fire that spread through his chest as he gathered supplies by lamplight. Clean cloth torn from his spare shirt, a sewing needle and thread, the bottle of whiskey that was supposed to last him through winter, a leather strap for her to bite down on. His hands moved with a steadiness that surprised him. For 8 years, they'd shaken constantly, a visible reminder of everything he'd lost. But now, with purpose driving him forward, they held firm. When he returned to the barn, Najoni was still awake, still watching him with those fierce dark eyes. You came back. Said I would? Men say many things. She shifted against the grain sacks, wincing. Few keep their word. Then you've been knowing the wrong kind of men. He knelt beside her and laid out his supplies. The lamplight caught the gash across her ribs, and his stomach turned. Worse than he'd thought. Deep enough to need stitching, and he hadn't held a needle since Martha had tried to teach him mending. He'd been terrible at it then. He had to be better now. This is gonna hurt like hell, he warned. But if I don't close this wound, infection will set in. You understand? She nodded. Her eyes never left his. Bite down on this. He pressed the leather strap between her teeth. And try not to scream. Those men might still be close enough to hear. Najoni's jaw clenched around the leather. She gave him one short nod. Ezra poured whiskey over the wound. Her body went rigid. A muffled sound escaped around the leather. Not a scream, but something close to it. Her hand shot out and grabbed his forearm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. I'm sorry, he muttered, working quickly. I'm sorry, I know it hurts. I'm sorry. The needle pierced skin. She didn't flinch, didn't cry out, just held onto his arm like he was the only solid thing in a world that had gone liquid with pain. Stitch after stitch, he closed the wound. His hands remembered movements he'd thought forgotten. Martha's patient voice guiding him through the basics, her laughter when he'd pricked his own finger more times than the fabric. You're hopeless, Ezra Thornton. Never said I wasn't. Lucky for you, I love hopeless causes. The memory hit him so hard he almost dropped the needle. 8 years and Martha's voice could still ambush him in moments like this. But there was no time for ghosts. Not now. He tied off the last stitch and sat back, wiping sweat from his forehead with a blood-stained hand. Done. His voice came out rough. It ain't pretty, but it'll hold. Najoni spat out the leather strap, gasping. Her face was pale, sheened with sweat, but her eyes remained clear. You have done this before. Stitched up a woman, no. Stitched up anything. My wife tried to teach me. I was terrible. You are better now. Had proper motivation. She laughed. The sound caught him off guard, low and warm, nothing like the cold determination she'd shown before. For a moment, she wasn't a wounded fugitive, or an Apache warrior, or a woman running from a forced marriage. She was just a person, tired and hurt, and somehow still finding something to laugh about. What's funny? You. She shook her head slowly. You have blood on your face. Your hands are shaking again. You look like you will fall over any moment. Probably will. But you stayed. You helped. You did not have to do any of this. Told you. I know what you told me. She reached up and touched his cheek. The contact was brief, barely there, but it sent warmth spreading through his chest. Now I tell you something, Ezra Thornton. He waited. In my language we have word. Naye Nezgani. It means monster slayer, but not always monster outside. She tapped her own chest. Sometimes monster inside, the darkness we fight in ourselves. What about it? You think you are broken man, failed man, man who let his family die. Her dark eyes held his. But tonight you became something else. You became man who stands in front of knives. Man who saves stranger in his barn. I ain't. You are. She said it with absolute certainty. You just do not see it yet. Ezra's throat tightened. He looked away, unable to hold her gaze. You should rest. Your body needs to heal. You will stay. The question caught him off guard. Where else would I go? Anywhere. Away from this trouble. Away from me. Thought we established I ain't that kind of man. We established you are strange man. But she was smiling again, that small, warm expression that transformed her entire face. Strange and kind and a little bit crazy. Little bit. Very much crazy. He should have argued, should have pointed out that he wasn't kind, wasn't brave, wasn't anything except a broken shell going through the motions of living. But her eyes were closing, exhaustion finally winning against determination. And as he watched her drift into sleep, her hand still resting near his, Ezra realized something that scared him more than any warrior with a knife. For the first time in 8 years, he didn't want to be alone. Dawn crept over the ridge like a thief, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Ezra hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. Every sound sent him to the barn door, expecting to see riders returning with murder in their eyes. But the valley remained empty. Nizoni woke with the sun. She was stronger than she'd been last night, her color better, her breathing easier. The stitches had held through the night without signs of infection. You watched over me. It wasn't a question. Somebody had to. You could have slept. Could have done a lot of things. He handed her a tin cup filled with water from the well. Drink. Your body needs it. She drank without argument, watching him over the rim of the cup. The men will come back, she said finally. Takoda. He does not give up. It is not in his nature. I figured as much. You need to let me go. Ezra's head snapped up. What? I can walk now. Not far, but far enough. She set down the cup. If I leave before they return, you can tell them truth. You found me, help me, I left. They will believe you. And what happens to you? That is not your concern. The hell it ain't. The anger surprised him. It felt foreign after so many years of numbness. You really think I'm gonna patch you up just to watch you bleed out in some canyon? I think you have already risked too much. That's my choice to make. Why? She leaned forward, frustration flickering across her face. Why do you care what happens to me? You do not know me. You owe me nothing. Because you looked at me like I was human. The words hung between them. Everyone else looks at me like I'm something broken, something to be pitied or avoided. But you, he shook his head. You looked at me like I might actually be able to help, like I might actually be worth something. Najoni was silent for a long moment. You are worth something, Ezra. See, that's what I mean. Nobody talks to me like that. Nobody treats me like I still matter. He met her eyes. So no, I ain't letting you walk out of here to die alone. Not while I got breath in my body. You are very stubborn man. So I've been told. She studied him, that measuring look that seemed to see straight through to his bones. Then slowly she nodded. All right, stubborn man. What is your plan? Plan. You must have plan. You do not seem like fool who jumps in without thinking. That's actually exactly what I am. She laughed again, that warm, unexpected sound. Then we make plan together. Together. You saved my life. In my people's way, that creates bond. Debt that must be honored. She held out her hand. We are connected now, Ezra Thornton. Whether you like it or not. He stared at her outstretched hand. 8 years of isolation. 8 years of avoiding human contact like it might burn him. 8 years of building walls so high he'd forgotten what sunlight looked like. And now, a wounded Apache woman was offering to tear those walls down. He should refuse. Should push her away before she got too close. Before he failed her the way he'd failed Martha and Grace. Instead, Ezra Thornton took her hand. All right, he said quietly. Together. Her fingers closed around his, strong and warm and real. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried out across the valley. And for the first time in 8 years, Ezra didn't feel alone. The first day passed in a strange rhythm of silence and small words. Ezra brought food from the cabin, dried beef, hard biscuits, the last of his preserved apples. Najoni ate slowly, carefully, her body rebuilding what the wound had stolen. You live alone, she said between bites. Not a question. 8 years now. By choice? By necessity. He settled against the barn wall across from her, close enough to talk, but far enough to give her space. After the fire, I couldn't. People kept looking at me, expecting things, wanting me to be the man I was before. And you were not that man anymore. No. He stared at his hands. That man died in the fire with his family. What's left is just going through motions. Najoni set down her food. In my tongue we have word for this. Hojo Ogi Nasha. It means walking in sorrow. When the spirit leaves the body but the body keeps moving. That's exactly what it feels like. I know this walk. Her voice softened. After my mother died, I walked it for 2 summers. My father tried to reach me, but I was already gone. Here, she touched her chest, but not here. What brought you back? Anger. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. I realized that if I stayed in sorrow, they won. The people who hurt my mother. The world that took her. I decided I would not give them satisfaction. Anger's better than nothing, I suppose. Anger keeps you alive. But it is not living. She met his eyes. You cannot survive on anger forever, Ezra. Eventually you must find something else. Like what? That is question only you can answer. He didn't have a response to that. Didn't know if he'd ever have one. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence 2 wounded animals might share in a den, each aware of the other's pain, neither needing to fill the space with meaningless words. Tell me about them, Najoni said finally. Your wife. Your daughter. Ezra's chest tightened. Why? Because you carry them like stones around your neck. Maybe if you speak them aloud, they become lighter. Or heavier. Perhaps. She tilted her head. But you have been carrying them alone for 8 years. Has that made them lighter? It hadn't. God help him, it hadn't. Martha was... He searched for words that could capture her. She was sunlight. That's the only way I know to describe her. When she walked into a room, everything got brighter. She laughed at everything, my jokes, my mistakes, the way I couldn't cook worth a damn. You loved her. More than I knew how to say. I was never good with words, but she didn't need them. She could read me like a book, knew what I was feeling before I did. And your daughter, the name caught in his throat. Grace. She was 3 when... He couldn't finish, couldn't say the words. 3 summers. Najoni's voice was gentle. Old enough to know her father's face, old enough to love. She used to follow me everywhere, called me Papa from morning till night. I'd be working in the field, and I'd look up, and there she'd be watching me with these big eyes, like I was the most interesting thing in the world. Tears burned behind his eyes. He hadn't cried in 8 years, hadn't allowed himself that release. The night of the fire, I woke up to her screaming. The words came out rough, scraped from somewhere deep inside. The whole cabin was already burning. I couldn't see anything, just smoke and flames. I found her by the sound of her voice. You saved her. No. The word cracked. I got her out, but it was too late. She'd breathed too much smoke. She died in my arms while I watched our house burn with Martha still inside. Najoni was quiet for a long moment. Then she moved slowly, painfully, until she sat beside him. Her shoulder pressed against his. You did not fail them, Ezra. I should have. Should have. What woken earlier moved faster, stopped the fire with your bare hands. She shook her head. You are one man. Fire does not care about one man's love. Then why does it feel like my fault? Because guilt is easier than helplessness. Her voice carried the weight of experience. If it is your fault, then you could have changed it. If it is not your fault, then you had no control. And that... She paused. That is harder truth to carry. Ezra stared at the barn wall, seeing nothing. The tears he'd held back for 8 years spilled down his cheeks, silent and hot. Najoni didn't say anything, didn't try to comfort him with empty words. She just sat beside him, her shoulder warm against his, letting him grieve in whatever way he needed. When the tears finally stopped, he felt hollowed out. Empty. But it was a clean emptiness, like a wound that had been lanced. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not telling me it wasn't my fault. Would you have believed me? No. Then I saved us both the trouble. She leaned her head back against the wall. Now, tell me about Grace's laugh. Her laugh. The sorrow you carry. But what about the joy? Tell me the good memories, not just the painful ones. So he did. He told her about Grace's laugh, high and bright like bells ringing. About the way she'd mispronounce words and get frustrated when no one understood her. About Martha's terrible singing voice that she used anyway, filling their cabin with off-key hymns while she cooked. He told her about Sunday mornings when they'd all pile into bed together, Grace wedged between them. Martha's hair spread across the pillow like corn silk in sunlight. About the plans they'd made, more children, a bigger cabin, maybe a trip back east to meet Martha's family. He told her about the last normal day. How Martha had kissed him goodbye that morning. How Grace had waved from the window. How he'd ridden off to check the fence line thinking he'd be home by supper. By the time he finished, his voice was hoarse and the lamp had burned low. They sound like beautiful souls, Najoni said. They were. Then honor them with your life, not your death. The words hit him like cold water. What? You have been dying for 8 years, Ezra. Slowly, quietly, but dying all the same. Is that what Martha would want? Is that what Grace would want? You don't know what they'd want? No, But I know what any mother wants for her husband, any daughter for her father. She turned to look at him. They would want you to live, to find joy again, to stop punishing yourself for a crime you did not commit. It ain't that simple. No, it is not simple at all. She reached over and placed her hand on his. But you took first step already. What step? You saved me. Her fingers curled around his. A man who wants to die does not stand in front of knives. A man who wants to die does not stitch wounds in the dark. A man who wants to die does not cry for what he has lost. Ezra stared at their joined hands. Her skin was warm against his rough with calluses that spoke of hard work and harder survival. You cry because you still feel, she continued. And feeling, that is how we know we are still alive. Before he could respond, a sound cut through the quiet. Hoofbeats. Not distant this time. Close. Getting closer. Ezra was on his feet before his mind caught up with his body. He grabbed the pitchfork from its hook on the wall, the only weapon within reach. Stay hidden, he ordered. Ezra, stay hidden. He moved to the barn door, pressing himself against the frame. Through the crack he could see riders approaching. 4 this time, not 3. And leading them, his face twisted with cold purpose, was Dakota. They'd brought reinforcements. White man. Dakota's voice rang across the yard. I know you are there. I know you are hiding her. Ezra's grip tightened on the pitchfork. It was a pathetic weapon against 4 armed warriors. He might as well be holding a twig. We found blood on the ridge, Dakota continued. Her blood, the trail leads here. Give her to me, and I will let you live. A lie. Ezra could hear it in his voice. Whatever happened next, Dakota had no intention of letting witnesses survive. You have until I count to 10. Dakota dismounted. Then we burn your barn with both of you inside. 1. Ezra's mind raced. No weapons, no help, no chance of fighting 4 warriors and winning. 2. But maybe he didn't need to win. Maybe he just needed to buy time. 3. Time for what Najoni couldn't run, couldn't fight. She could barely stand without help. 4. Unless... 5. Unless he gave them something else to focus on. 6. All right? Ezra stepped out of the barn, pitchfork still in hand. All right, I'm coming out. Dakota smiled. It was the expression of a predator watching wounded prey stumble into the open. Where is she? Gone. Ezra forced his voice steady. Left last night, headed west. You lie. I ain't lying. She was here, I helped her, she left. Whatever quarrel you got with her, it ain't my business. Dakota moved closer. The 3 warriors behind him spread out, cutting off any escape routes. You expect me to believe a wounded woman walked away in the dark? Believe what you want, she ain't here. Then you will not mind if we search. I mind plenty. Ezra raised the pitchfork slightly. This is my property, my barn. You got no right to be here. Dakota laughed. It was a cold, ugly sound. Rights. You speak to me of rights. He drew his knife, the same blade that had pressed against Ezra's throat last night. Your people took our lands, killed our buffalo, forced us onto reservations, and you speak of rights. I didn't do any of that. You are white, that is enough. If that's how you see it, then talking's pointless. Ezra adjusted his grip on the pitchfork. You want to search my barn? Come try. Dakota's eyes narrowed. You would die for a woman you do not know. Already told you I ain't scared of dying. Perhaps not. Dakota gestured to his men. But there are many ways to die, some faster than others. The warriors moved forward. Ezra backed toward the barn door, pitchfork raised. His heart hammered so loud he could barely hear anything else. This was it. This was how he'd die alone, forgotten, protecting a woman who'd stumbled into his life by accident. Somehow, it felt right. Then a voice cut through the tension. "Stop." Najoni emerged from the barn. She moved slowly, one hand pressed against her wounded side, but her head was high. Her eyes burned with a defiance that made Dakota take an involuntary step back. "You want me?" She spread her arms. "Here I am." "Najoni." Dakota's voice shifted. Anger mixed with something else, longing maybe, or wounded pride. "You should not have run. You should not have tried to force me." "I did not force anything. Our fathers made arrangement." "Our fathers." She cut him off. "Not me. I never agreed. I never wanted." "It does not matter what you want." Dakota's composure cracked. "You were promised to me. You belong to me." "I belong to no one." The words hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Ezra watched Dakota's face twist through emotions, rage, humiliation, something that looked almost like hurt. For a moment, he almost felt sorry for the man. Almost. "You shame me in front of my warriors," Dakota said quietly. "You shame my family. My name. Your shame is your own making." Najoni didn't flinch. "I told you I would not marry you. I told you 100 times. You did not listen. Because your answer was wrong." "There is no wrong answer when it comes to my own heart." Dakota's hand tightened on his knife. "Then your heart is my enemy." He lunged. Ezra moved without thinking. The pitchfork caught Dakota's blade, deflecting it just enough that it missed Najoni's throat by inches. The impact jarred Ezra's arms, sent him stumbling backward, but he kept his grip. "Get back." He put himself between Najoni and the warriors. "Both of you get back." Dakota recovered quickly, circling to the left. "You defend her still. Even now. I defend what's right. You know nothing of right. You know nothing of our ways. I know forcing a woman into marriage ain't right anywhere." Something shifted in the expressions of the other warriors. One of them, the older one, with scars, glanced at his companions. Dakota saw it. His face darkened. "What are you waiting for? Take him." The warriors hesitated. "I said, take him. The white man speaks truth." The scarred warrior stepped forward. "This is not honorable hunt, Dakota. This is revenge. She is my bride. She refused you. That is her right." The warrior's voice was calm but firm. "Your father arranged marriage, but even he cannot force consent. You know this." Dakota's jaw clenched. "You would side with him with them. I side with what is right." The warrior looked at Najoni. "Your father sent us to bring you home, not to drag you back in chains." "My father—" Najoni's voice caught. "My father knows I am here. Honovi knows everything that happens in our territory. He received word of your escape. He is displeased with how Dakota has handled this matter." Dakota went pale. "You told him. Did you think you could hunt his daughter like an animal without him learning?" The scarred warrior shook his head. "You are young, Dakota. Young and foolish. Your pride has blinded you." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Dakota sheathed his knife. "This is not over," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Najoni, this is not over." He mounted his horse and rode away without looking back. The other warriors remained. The scarred one dismounted and approached Najoni with slow, careful movements. "Your father wishes to see you." "Is he angry?" "He is concerned." A pause. "And yes, also angry. But not at you." Najoni closed her eyes. When she opened them, they glistened with tears she refused to shed. "I cannot travel. My wound will heal in time." The warrior glanced at Ezra. "This man, he helped you. He saved my life." The warrior studied Ezra for a long moment. Whatever he saw seemed to satisfy him. "I am called Kuruk. I speak for Honovi in matters outside our camp." He placed a hand over his heart. "You have my gratitude, Ezra Thornton, and the gratitude of our chief." Ezra blinked. "How do you know my name?" "We watched your land for 2 days before Dakota's hunters arrived. We heard you speak to your horses." A hint of amusement crossed Kuruk's weathered face. "You talked to them quite a bit for a man who claims to prefer silence." Heat crept up Ezra's neck. "Horses don't expect answers." "No, they do not." Kuruk turned back to Nijoni. "We will camp nearby until you are strong enough to travel. Your father will want to meet the man who protected his daughter." "Meet him." Ezra's stomach dropped. That's not necessary." "It is very necessary." Kuruk's eyes held something Ezra couldn't read. "In our way, what you did creates bond. Debt that must be honored. Honovi will wish to honor it properly." "I don't want any honor. I just did what was right." "Yes." Kuruk smiled. "That is exactly why you deserve it." The warriors made camp at the edge of Ezra's property, close enough to watch but far enough to give him space. Over the next several days, they became a quiet presence in his life. Occasional visitors who brought fresh game and news of Dakota's movements. He'd returned to his own band apparently, humiliated, furious, but bound by honor to accept Nijoni's refusal now that it had been witnessed. "That doesn't mean he's done," Nijoni warned. "Dakota does not forget, does not forgive. Let him come." Ezra was surprised by the steel in his own voice. "I've faced worse than wounded pride." "Have you?" The question caught him off guard. He thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," he admitted. "Probably not. But I ain't the same man I was a week ago." "No." She reached over and touched his hand. "You are not." They fell into a rhythm over those days. Ezra would bring her food and water. She would teach him words in her language, simple things at first, then more complex phrases. Ahehi, thank you. Yaate, hello. Nijoni, beautiful. "That's your name," he said when she taught him the last one. "It means beautiful. It means beauty, harmony, balance." She shrugged. "My mother chose it because she said I brought balance to her life." "The mother who was white?" "Yes." Nijoni settled back against the grain sacks. Her wound was healing well, the stitches holding no sign of infection. "She was taken in a raid when she was young, 14 summers." "That's terrible." "It was, but—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "By the time I was born, she no longer wished to leave. She had found place among our people, found love with my father. She chose to stay. She chose to make the best of where life placed her." Nijoni met his eyes. "That is what we must all do, is it not? Accept what we cannot change and fight for what we can." Ezra thought about that. About 8 years of refusing to accept, refusing to adapt, refusing to do anything except slowly die. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." She was, and stubborn. Very, very stubborn. "I can see where you get it." She laughed, that warm, unexpected sound that he'd grown to treasure. "You are learning Ezra Thornton." "Learning what?" "How to speak, how to laugh, how to be human again." She tilted her head. Was that not obvious? It hadn't been. But now that she said it, he could feel the truth of it. The way words came easier now. The way his hands shook less. The way he no longer dreaded each morning as another day to survive. "Why do you care?" The question came out before he could stop it. "Why do any of this teach me words, tell me stories, treat me like I matter?" "Because you do matter. You don't know me. I know enough." She reached up and touched his face, a gesture so gentle it made his chest ache. "I know you stood in front of knives for me. I know you cried for your daughter. I know you talk to horses because you have forgotten how to talk to people. That's not. And I know that somewhere inside that broken shell is a good man who deserves to live again." Her eyes held his. "That is enough, Ezra. That is more than enough." He didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to respond to kindness he hadn't earned and couldn't repay. So he did the only thing that felt right. He covered her hand with his own and held on. Outside, the sun was setting. Karuk's warriors had built a small fire at the edge of the property, and the smell of cooking meat drifted through the barn door. Tomorrow, Najoni would be strong enough to travel. Tomorrow, she would leave. And Ezra would be alone again. The thought should have brought relief. A return to the quiet, isolated existence he'd built so carefully. No more complications, no more risk, no more chances to fail someone else. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, watching the only solid ground crumble away. "Ezra," Najoni's voice was soft. "I must tell you something." "What?" "Tomorrow when I leave," she took a breath, "I want you to come with me." He stared at her. "What?" "To meet my father. To see my people." Her fingers tightened around his. "I know it is a strange request. I know we have only known each other for days, but what? But I do not wish to leave you here alone." Her eyes glistened. "And I think you do not wish to be left." She was right. God help him, she was right. "I can't just abandon my land." "Why not? What does it give you except memories of pain?" "It's all I have left." "No." She shook her head firmly. "It is all you have allowed yourself to have. There is difference." Ezra's throat tightened. Every excuse he tried to form crumbled before it reached his lips. "Your father might not want me there." "My father will want to meet the man who saved his daughter. After that?" She shrugged. "We will see. I'm not good with people, Najoni. You've seen how I am. I can barely string 2 words together without choking." "Then do not speak." She smiled. "I will speak for both of us." He wanted to say yes. He wanted to say yes so badly it scared him. But 8 years of walls didn't crumble in a week. 8 years of isolation didn't dissolve just because someone asked nicely. "Let me think about it," he said finally. "That is all I ask." She lay back and closed her eyes, her hand still holding his. Ezra sat there in the darkness, listening to her breathing slow into sleep. Tomorrow, she would leave. And he had until dawn to decide whether he would let her go alone. Dawn came too quickly. Ezra had spent the night sitting against the barn wall watching Najoni sleep, and wrestling with a decision that shouldn't have been this hard. Go with her or stay behind. Simple choices, simple words. Nothing about this felt simple. When the first light crept through the cracks in the barn door, Najoni stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, found his face, and something flickered there. Hope, maybe, or fear of what his answer might be. "You did not sleep," she said. "Couldn't." "Because of the decision." "Because of a lot of things." He rubbed his face with both hands, feeling the rough stubble he hadn't bothered to shave in days. "Najoni, I want to say yes. I want that more than I've wanted anything in 8 years. But I'm scared." The admission cost him something. "I'm scared that if I leave this place, I'll lose the last piece of them I have left. Martha and Grace, their graves are here. Their memories are here. If I walk away..." "You think you will forget them?" "I think I'll have to." Najoni sat up slowly, wincing as the movement pulled at her healing wound. She reached over and took his hand in both of hers. "Ezra, listen to me carefully." Her voice was gentle but firm. "Your wife and daughter do not live in this land. They do not live in a cabin or a barn or 2 wooden markers in the ground. They live here." She pressed his hand against his chest over his heart. "They go where you go. They stay when you stay. Leaving this place will not erase them." "How do you know?" "Because I carry my mother the same way." Her eyes glistened. She died when I was 15 summers. I have moved many times since then, different camps, different lands, different seasons. But she is always with me. In my dreams, in my choices, in the way I speak and think and love. That's different. How? He didn't have an answer. Come with me, she said again. Not forever. Not as promise you cannot keep. Just come. See my people. Meet my father. And if you decide this is not your path, I will bring you back myself. You'd do that. I would do many things for you, Ezra Thornton. She smiled, that small, warm expression that had become the brightest part of his days. You have not yet learned how stubborn I can be. I'm starting to get an idea. Then you know I will not give up easily. He looked at her, really looked at her, at the strength in her eyes, at the healing wound she'd endured without complaint, at the hand holding his like she was afraid to let go. All right, he said. All right. I'll come with you, just to meet your father, just to see. Her face transformed. The smile that broke across her features was like watching the sun rise slow at first, then blazing with light. You will not regret this. Probably will. Then I will make sure the regret is worth it. She squeezed his hand, and for a moment, everything felt possible. Then Kuruk appeared in the barn doorway. We must leave soon. His weathered face was grave. Scouts report movement to the east. Takota's warriors. Ezra's blood ran cold. I thought he accepted her refusal. He accepted it publicly. But Takota is not man who forgets insult. Kuruk's eyes moved to Najoni. He will not challenge you directly again. But the white man? He has no such protection. What are you saying? I am saying that once we leave, Ezra Thornton will be alone. And Takota knows where he lives. The words hung in the air like smoke. Najoni's grip on Ezra's hand tightened. Then he comes with us now, today. I cannot travel that fast, Ezra protested. I need to secure the property pack supplies. There is no time for that. The horses will survive without you. Kuruk stepped closer. Listen to me, white man. I have seen what Takota does to those who shame him. If you stay here alone, you will not see another sunrise. Fear coiled in Ezra's stomach. Not the fear of death he'd made peace with that long ago, but the fear of leaving everything behind. The fear of stepping into a world he didn't understand. I can't just... Yes, you can. Najoni stood steadying herself against the wall. You told me you would come with me. This is me holding you to that promise. I meant after I prepared... Life does not wait for us to prepare Ezra. It moves forward whether we are ready or not. She touched his face. Come, now. Trust me. Trust. 8 years since he had trusted anyone with anything. But looking into her eyes, seeing the fierce certainty there, Ezra realized he'd already made his choice. He'd made it the moment he carried her bleeding into this barn. He'd made it every day since, in every small act of care and kindness. All right, he said. Let's go. They moved quickly after that. Kuruk's warriors broke camp while Ezra gathered what little he could carry. Some food, a change of clothes, the leather pouch Najoni had left behind that first night. He paused at the cabin door, looking back at the life he was leaving. Martha's chair by the fireplace. Grace's rag doll sitting on the shelf where he'd placed it 8 years ago. The silence that had been his only companion for so long. Goodbye, he whispered. I'll carry you with me. I promise. Then he closed the door and walked away. They rode hard for most of the morning. Najoni shared a horse with one of Kuruk's warriors, her wound still too fresh for the strain of riding alone. Ezra had his own mount, a sturdy mare that one of the warriors had brought specifically for him. You knew I would come, he said to Kuruk during a brief rest. I hoped. The old man's eyes crinkled. Najoni spoke of you often while she healed. She said you were good man hiding inside broken shell. She gives me too much credit. Perhaps. Or perhaps she sees what you cannot. Kuruk offered him a water skin. In our way, there is no such thing as accident. You found Najoni for reason. She found you for reason. The spirits do not waste their movements. I don't believe in spirits. They believe in you, that is enough. By midday they'd put several miles between themselves and Ezra's homestead. The landscape changed as they rode open plains, giving way to rolling hills, then to the edges of canyon country, where red rock formations jutted from the earth like ancient monuments. Ezra had never traveled this far west, had never had reason to. The world beyond his property had ceased to exist for him 8 years ago, shrunk down to the boundaries of his grief. Now it expanded around him, vast and beautiful and terrifying. "You are quiet," Najoni said when they stopped to rest the horses. "Thinking." "About what?" "About how small I've been living." He stared at the horizon, at the endless sky. "All those years I thought I was protecting myself. Turns out I was just hiding. There is no shame in hiding when you are wounded." She moved to stand beside him. "The shame comes when you refuse to stop. And if you don't know how to stop, then you find someone to teach you." She slipped her hand into his. "That is what I am here for." They rode until the sun began its descent, then made camp in a sheltered canyon. Karuk's warriors moved with practiced efficiency, setting up watch rotations and preparing a small fire for cooking. Ezra felt useless, out of place, like a child who'd wandered into adult affairs and didn't know the rules. "Sit," Najoni told him, patting the ground beside her. "Eat. You have done enough for one day." "I haven't done anything." "You left your home, for me." She handed him a strip of dried meat. "That is not nothing. It doesn't feel like enough. Nothing ever does." She leaned against his shoulder. "That is how we know we are still human." They ate in silence, watching the flames dance. The warriors spoke quietly among themselves in their own language, sounds that washed over Ezra like water, incomprehensible but somehow soothing. "Tell me about your father," he said eventually. "What should I expect? Hanavi is—" Najoni paused, choosing her words. "He is complicated man, fierce warrior, protective father. He lost much when my mother died, not just wife, but the part of himself that knew how to be soft." "Sounds familiar." "Yes." She glanced at him. "Perhaps that is why I am drawn to broken men." "Should I be offended by that?" "Only if you wish to be." A small smile. "My father will test you. He will watch how you speak, how you move, how you look at me. He will decide if you are worthy of the debt he owes you. I don't want any debt. It is not about what you want. It is about what is." She turned to face him fully. "In our way, saving a chief's daughter is serious matter. It cannot be ignored or dismissed. Honovi must respond, or he loses honor. So he has to give me something. He has to acknowledge what you did, the form of acknowledgement." She hesitated. "That depends on many things." "Like what?" "Like what I tell him. Like what he sees when he meets you. Like what he believes your intentions are." "My intentions?" Ezra frowned. "I don't have any intentions. I just helped a woman who needed help." "That is what makes this complicated." Najoni's eyes held something he couldn't read. "A man with selfish intentions is easy to repay. Gold Horse's goods transaction is complete. But a man who acts from pure heart, what happens to him?" She didn't answer. "Najoni, what happens?" "We will see," she said quietly. "We will see." Ezra wanted to press further, but something in her expression stopped him. Instead, he let the silence settle between them, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. That night, sleep came easier than expected. The exhaustion of travel, the warmth of the fire, the steady presence of Najoni beside him, all of it combined into a weight that pulled him under. He dreamed of Martha, Not the nightmare dreams that usually plagued him, smoke and screaming, and the smell of burning flesh. This dream was different, softer. Martha stood in a field of wildflowers, Grace in her arms, both of them smiling at him. "You're letting go," Martha said. Her voice was gentle, free of accusation. "I don't want to forget you." Letting go isn't forgetting. She shifted Grace to her hip the way she always had. It's making room. Room for what? For whatever comes next. She reached out and touched his face, a ghost's touch barely there. "We'll always be with you, Ezra, but you can't build a life around graves. You have to build it around the living." "I don't know how." "Yes, you do." She smiled. "You're already doing it." He woke to gray light and the sound of voices. Urgent voices. Karuk stood at the edge of camp speaking rapidly with one of his scouts. The other warriors were already mounting their horses, hands on weapons. Najoni grabbed Ezra's arm. "Something is wrong." "What?" "Dakota." Karuk's voice cut through the confusion. "His warriors hit your homestead last night. Burned the barn, the cabin." The words didn't make sense at first. Burned. His barn. His cabin. They found no one there. Karuk continued, his expression grim. "So they left message. For you." "What message?" Karuk hesitated. "They took the graves." Everything stopped. "What do you mean they took the graves?" "The wooden markers. The stones. They destroyed them." Karuk's voice was heavy with something that might have been regret. "Scattered the remains. It is great dishonor in our way and in yours." Ezra couldn't breathe. Martha. Grace. Their resting place. The last physical piece of them that existed in this world. Gone. "We must keep moving." Karuk was speaking again, but his voice sounded distant, muffled. "Dakota will know you traveled with us. He may try to intercept. I'm going back." The words came from somewhere deep inside, somewhere past thought or reason. "Ezra," Najoni's hand on his arm. "I have to go back." He pulled away from her. "I have to. They're my family. I can't leave them like that. There is nothing to go back to." Her voice broke. "Don't you understand? He did this to hurt you. If you return, you give him exactly what he wants." "I don't care." "I care." She grabbed his face in both hands, forcing him to look at her. "I care, Ezra. And Martha would care. And Grace would care. They would not want you to die for scattered bones and broken wood. You don't know what they'd want. I know what anyone who loved you would want." Tears streamed down her face. "They would want you to live. To be happy. To stop destroying yourself over things you cannot change." He desecrated their graves, and he will answer for it, but not today, not like this. She pressed her forehead against his. "Please, please, Ezra, do not leave me now. Do not leave me." The words cut through the fog of rage and grief. Ezra looked at her, really looked at her. At the tears on her cheeks, at the desperate hope in her eyes, at the woman who had in the space of a week somehow become the only person left in the world who saw him as something other than broken. "He destroyed everything," he whispered. "Not everything." She placed his hand over her heart. "Not this." He stood there balanced on a knife's edge between past and future, between the ghosts who haunted him and the woman who was trying to save him. "If I stay," his voice cracked. "If I don't go back, what does that make me?" "It makes you alive." She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "It makes you someone who chose to keep fighting instead of giving up." "It feels like betrayal." "I know." She took his hand in both of hers. "But sometimes the bravest thing we can do is keep living when everything in us wants to stop." Ezra closed his eyes. He thought of Martha in the wildflower field, telling him to make room. He thought of Grace's laughter, high and bright like bells. He thought of the man he'd been before the fire. The man who believed in tomorrow, who built things instead of destroying himself. That man wasn't dead. He'd just been sleeping. "All right," Ezra said finally. His voice was hoarse, scraped raw by grief. "All right. I'll stay." Najoni let out a breath she'd been holding. She wrapped her arms around him and held on tight, her body shaking with relief. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest. "Thank you." Karuk gave them a moment. Then his voice cut through, urgent but not unkind. "We must move. Now. If Dakota realizes we are close, then let him come." The voice came from the canyon rim. Ezra's head snapped up. Silhouettes lined the ridge above them. A dozen warriors, maybe more, their weapons catching the early light. And at their center, his face twisted with cold satisfaction, sat Dakota. "Did you think you could run forever, Najoni?" He urged his horse forward down the slope toward their camp. "Did you think I would simply let you go?" Kuruk stepped forward, hand on his weapon. "This is not your territory, Dakota. You have no authority here." "Authority?" Dakota laughed. "I have 12 warriors. That is all the authority I need. Honovi will hear of this." "Honovi is an old man clinging to old ways." Dakota's eyes found Ezra. "And you, the white man who thinks he can take what belongs to me." "She doesn't belong to you." Ezra's voice came out steadier than he expected. "She doesn't belong to anyone." "So she has convinced you. How sweet." Dakota dismounted his warriors, following suit. "I burned your home, white man. I scattered your dead. And still you run with her like a loyal dog." "I'm not running anywhere." "No." Dakota drew his knife. "Then let us finish what we started." Kuruk moved to intervene, but Najoni stepped forward first. "Enough!" The single word carried across the canyon like thunder. She walked past Ezra, past Kuruk, until she stood directly in front of Dakota. Her wound had reopened. Ezra could see the blood seeping through her bandage, but she didn't seem to notice. "You want to prove yourself." She stood her ground, unflinching. "Then face me. Not the white man. Not my father's warriors. Me." Dakota's face twisted. "You insult me." "I challenge you. There is difference." Her voice was ice and fire combined. "In front of all these witnesses. Warrior to warrior. Single combat. You are wounded. And you are coward. We are both disadvantaged." She drew a knife from somewhere beneath her clothing. "Unless you are afraid to face a woman who can barely stand." The silence stretched like a bowstring pulled too tight. Ezra wanted to scream, to pull her back, to throw himself between them. But he understood somehow that this wasn't his fight. This had never been his fight. It was hers. Dakota's jaw clenched. His warriors watched in silence, their eyes moving between him and Najoni. "If I win," he said slowly, "you come with me willingly. No more running." "If you win." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "And if I win, you leave. Forever. You do not speak my name. You do not look in my direction. You cease to exist in my world." "Agreed." They circled each other, knives glinting in the early light. Ezra's heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct screamed at him to do something, anything, but Karuk's hand on his shoulder held him in place. "This is her battle," the old man murmured. "She must fight it alone. She's wounded. She is stronger than her wound. Trust her." Dakota struck first. The blade whistled through the air, aimed at Najoni's throat. She twisted away the movement, pulling at her wound, her face contorting with pain, but her feet never faltering. Counter, slash, block. They moved like dancers if dancers were trying to kill each other. Dakota was faster, stronger, uninjured. But Najoni fought like someone who had nothing left to lose. Blood splattered the canyon floor, hers from the reopened wound. But she kept fighting. "Give up," Dakota snarled, pressing his advantage. "You cannot win." Watch me." She feinted left, and when he committed to the block, she dropped low and drove her blade into his thigh. Dakota screamed. He staggered backward, hand clamping over the wound. Not fatal, but deep enough to slow him down, to even the odds. "Yield," Najoni said. Her voice was steady, despite the blood soaking through her bandage. "This is your only chance." "Never!" He lunged. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion, Dakota's blade arcing toward her heart. Najoni sidestepping barely, the knife grazing her arm instead, her own blade coming up under his guard, pressing against his throat. Stillness. "Yield," she said again. "Or die. Choose." The canyon held its breath. Dakota's eyes burned with hate, with humiliation, with something that might have been despair. His warriors watched in silence, waiting to see what their leader would do. "You win," he spat. The words sounded like they were being torn from him. "I yield." Najoni stepped back. The knife lowered, but she didn't sheath it. "Then go. And remember your promise." Dakota staggered to his horse, his warriors rushing to help him. Before he mounted, he looked back at Najoni, then at Ezra. "This is not over," he said quietly. "Yes," Najoni replied. "It is." They rode away. 12 warriors defeated by a wounded woman who refused to be owned. Najoni's knees buckled the moment they disappeared over the ridge. Ezra caught her before she hit the ground. Her blood soaked through his shirt, warm and wet, and for one terrible moment he was back in the burning cabin holding Grace's small body as the life drained out of her. "Stay with me," he begged. "Stay with me, Najoni." "I'm not going anywhere." Her voice was weak, but her eyes were bright. "Told you I was stubborn." "You're insane. You could have died." "But I didn't." She reached up and touched his face. "And now we are free. Both of us." Kuruk knelt beside them, already working on her wound with practiced hands. The other warriors formed a protective circle watching the ridge in case Dakota changed his mind. "She will live," Kuruk said after a moment. "But she needs rest. Real rest." "How far to your camp?" "Half a day's ride." The old man looked at Ezra. "Can you carry her?" "I'll carry her as far as I need to." Kuruk smiled, the first genuine smile Ezra had seen from him. "Then let us go. Hanavi is waiting." Ezra lifted Najoni in his arms, careful of her wounds, and carried her to the horses. She was lighter than she should have been, this fierce woman who had fought for her own freedom, who had stood between him and despair, who had somehow impossibly become the most important person in his world. "Ezra," she murmured against his chest. "Yeah. Thank you for staying." He pressed his lips to her forehead, a gesture so natural he didn't realize he'd done it until it was over. "Thank you for giving me something worth staying for." They rode toward the rising sun, leaving behind the canyon where everything had changed. And somewhere in the back of Ezra's mind, he heard Martha's voice one last time. "Make room for whatever comes next." He was trying. God help him, he was finally trying. They reached the Apache camp as the sun hung low in the western sky. Ezra had never seen anything like it. Dozens of teepees spread across a valley, smoke rising from cooking fires, children running between shelters while elders watched with knowing eyes. A community, a family, everything he'd lost 8 years ago alive and thriving in front of him. His arms ached from carrying Najoni the last few miles. She'd drifted in and out of consciousness, her blood staining his shirt, her breath shallow against his neck. Every time she went quiet, his heart seized with terror. Every time she stirred, he whispered promises he wasn't sure he could keep. "Almost there," he told her now. "Just hold on a little longer. Stop fussing." Her voice was weak, but her spirit remained unbroken. "I've survived worse." "When?" "I'll tell you. Later." Kuruk rode ahead, announcing their arrival with calls that echoed across the valley. By the time Ezra reached the camp's edge, a crowd had gathered. Warriors, women, children, all of them staring at the white man carrying their chief's daughter like she was made of glass. "Make way!" Kuruk shouted. "She needs the healer!" The crowd parted. An elderly woman emerged from one of the larger teepees, her face weathered, but her eyes sharp as flint. She took one look at Najoni and began barking orders in rapid Apache. Hands reached for her. Ezra's grip tightened instinctively. "Let them take her," Kuruk said gently. "Ayani is our best healer. She will save your woman." Your woman. The words hit Ezra like a fist. He wanted to protest, to explain that Najoni wasn't his anything, but the healer was already pulling her from his arms and carrying her into the tipi. "Wait!" He started to follow. A hand on his chest stopped him. "You cannot enter." The voice was deep commanding. Ezra looked up into the face of a man who could only be Honovi. He was older than Ezra expected, his hair streaked with gray, his face marked by decades of hard living. But his eyes, dark and fierce, held the same intensity as Najoni's. The same measuring look that seemed to see straight through to bone. "You are the one who saved my daughter." It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir." The words came out rough, uncertain. "I mean, I helped her. She saved herself mostly." Kuruk tells a different story. Honovi studied him the way a man might study a horse he was considering buying. He says you stood against Takota's warriors with nothing but a pitchfork, that you took a knife to your throat rather than reveal her location. "I did what anyone would do." "No." Honovi's voice hardened. "You did what a good man would do. There is difference." He gestured for Ezra to follow, leading him away from the healer's teepee toward a larger structure at the camp's center. Warriors watched them pass, their expressions unreadable. Inside the chief's teepee was warm with firelight. Honovi sat and motioned for Ezra to do the same. For a long moment, neither spoke. "My daughter has been running from Takota for 3 summers, Honovi said finally. 3 times she has escaped. 3 times she has been brought back. I could not interfere without starting war between our bands. Why not, you're her father? And he was her betrothed. The arrangement was made when she was child, before I understood what kind of man he would become." Regret flickered across Honovi's face. "By the time I saw his true nature, it was too late. Breaking the arrangement would have meant bloodshed. Many deaths. So you let her suffer." The words came out harsher than Ezra intended. Honovi's eyes flashed. "I let her fight. There is difference." He leaned forward. "Every time she ran, she grew stronger. Every time she returned, she learned something new. I could not save her from Takota, but I could prepare her to save herself." "That's a hell of a gamble with your daughter's life." "Yes, it was." Honovi held his gaze without flinching. "And now she is free, because she was strong enough to fight, and because a white man with sad eyes chose to help her when he had every reason to walk away." Ezra's throat tightened. "I didn't do it for reward." "I know. That is why I must give you one." "I told Kuruk I don't want anything." "What you want does not matter." Honovi's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "In our way, debts must be honored. You saved my daughter's life. You gave her shelter, healed her wounds, protected her from men who would have killed you both. This cannot go unanswered." "Then consider it answered. We're even." "We are not even." Honovi rose to his feet, towering over Ezra. "A chief's daughter is not equal to a white farmer's kindness. The debt I owe you is greater than gold, greater than horses, greater than anything I could simply give." "Then what do you want from me?" The question hung in the air. Honovi was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Softer, almost vulnerable. "I want to know what you feel for my daughter." Ezra's heart stopped. "What? Do not play fool with me, Ezra Thornton. I have watched you carry her across miles of rough country. I have seen how you look at her, how you held her like she was the most precious thing in the world." Honovi's eyes bore into his. "So I ask again, what do you feel for Najoni?" "The truth." He was asking for the truth. And God help him, Ezra wasn't sure he knew what that was. He struggled to find words. "She's the first person in 8 years who's made me feel like I might actually be alive. The first person who's looked at me and seen something other than a broken man waiting to die. That is not answer to my question. It's the only answer I have." Ezra met the chief's eyes. "I don't know what I feel exactly. It's too new, too strange. A week ago she was a stranger bleeding in my barn. Now she's—" He trailed off. "Now she is what? Now she's everything." The admission tore out of him. "And that scares me more than anything Dakota could ever do." Honovi studied him for a long, measured moment. "You were married before?" "Yes." "Your wife died?" "In a fire, along with our daughter." "And you blame yourself?" "Every day." The chief nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he'd already suspected. "My daughter told me you spoke of them, that you wept for them in her presence." He paused. "In our way, a man who still weeps for his dead is a man whose heart is not yet closed. He can still feel, still love, still grow." "I'm not sure I know how to love anymore." "Then let her teach you." Honovi sat back down, his expression shifting into something almost gentle. "Najoni has asked me for something I did not expect, something that goes against our traditions in many ways." "What did she ask for?" "She asked to honor the debt herself, in the way of her heart, not the way of warriors." Ezra's blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" "It means she wishes to take you as husband." The words hit him like a physical blow. What? "She wishes to marry you, to bind her life to yours in the way of our people." Honovi's eyes never left his face. "This is not typical. Usually the father chooses. The arrangement is made between families, but Najoni has never been typical daughter. We've known each other a week. My wife and I knew each other 3 days before we married. We had 40 summers together before she passed." Honovi shrugged. "Time is not measure of feeling. Connection is." "But Ezra struggled to form coherent thoughts. "I'm white. I'm broken. I'm nothing. You are man who saved my daughter's life, who carried her across rough country, who wept for his dead wife and child." Honovi rose again and placed a heavy hand on Ezra's shoulder. "You are not nothing, Ezra Thornton. You are exactly what she needs. And if I say no, then you say no. She will be hurt, but she will survive. She always does." The chief's grip tightened. "But I do not think you will say no. I think you are already hers, even if you do not know it yet." Ezra's mind raced. Marriage. To Najoni. To a woman he'd known for barely a week from a world he didn't understand, in a culture he couldn't navigate. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly what he wanted. "Can I see her?" he asked. "Before I decide." Honovi nodded. "Ayani says she will live. The wounds are serious but not fatal. She is awake now asking for you. She has asked for you every time she opens her eyes." A hint of a smile crossed the chief's weathered face. "Go to her, hear what she has to say, then give me your answer." Ezra stood on unsteady legs. He walked toward the teepee entrance, then stopped. "Honovi." "Yes." "If I do this, if I marry her, what happens to me? To my life?" "Your old life is already gone. Dakota burned it to the ground." Honovi's voice carried no cruelty, only truth. "The question is not what happens to your life. The question is whether you are ready to build a new one." Ezra stepped out into the fading light and made his way to the healer's tipi. Nijoni was awake when he entered. She lay on a bed of furs, her wounds freshly bandaged, her face pale, but her eyes bright. When she saw him, something shifted in her expression. Relief, hope, fear, all tangled together. "You came." "Course I came." He knelt beside her, taking her hand without thinking. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was stabbed twice and rode half a day on horseback." She tried to smile. "So better than expected." "You scared me." "I scared myself." Her fingers tightened around his. "When Takota's blade came at my heart, I thought this is it. This is how I die. After everything." "But you didn't." "No." "Because I had something to live for." Her eyes held his. Someone to live for. Ezra's heart hammered against his ribs. "Nijoni." "My father told you what I asked." "Yes." "Are you angry?" "Angry?" He almost laughed. "Why would I be angry?" "Because I made decision for both of us. Because I presumed." She looked away, vulnerability cracking through her usual fierce composure. "Because I am foolish woman who falls in love in 1 week and thinks white farmer will want to marry Apache runaway." "You're in love with me?" The question came out rough, incredulous. She turned back to face him, her jaw set with defiance. "Yes, I am in love with you, Ezra Thornton. You are kind and broken and stubborn and sad, and you talk to horses because you have forgotten how to talk to people. You make terrible jokes, and you cannot cook, and your hands shake when you are nervous." Her voice cracked. "And you are the best man I have ever known." "You don't know me." "I know enough." She reached up and touched his face. "I know you stood in front of knives for me. I know you carried me when I could not walk. I know you cry for your dead and fight for the living, and somewhere under all that grief is a heart that still knows how to love." "I'm scared." "So am I." "What if I fail you? What if something happens and I can't protect you, and I lose you the way I lost them?" "Then you will grieve, and then you will live." Her thumb traced his cheekbone. "That is what the living do, Ezra. We lose, we break, we keep going." "I don't know if I'm strong enough." "You are stronger than you know." She pulled him closer until their foreheads touched. "You have already survived the worst thing that can happen to a man. You watched your wife and child die. You lived 8 years in hell, and you are still here, still breathing, still capable of kindness. That's not strength. That's stubbornness. Sometimes they are the same thing." Ezra closed his eyes. He could feel her breath on his face, smell the herbs from her bandages, hear the steady rhythm of her heart. "If I say yes," he whispered, "if I marry you, there's no going back. My world doesn't accept people like us. Your world barely tolerates me. Then we build our own world." Her voice was fierce. "You and me, together, something new that belongs to neither and both." "Is that possible?" "I do not know." She pulled back enough to look into his eyes. "But I know I want to try. With you. Only with you." He thought of Martha in the wildflower field, telling him to make room. He thought of Grace's laugh high and bright. He thought of 8 years alone, slowly dying, waiting for an end that never came. And he thought of this woman, fierce, wounded, impossible, who had crashed into his life like a storm and refused to leave. "Yes," he said. Her breath caught. "Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll build a new world with you. Yes to all of it." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks the corner of her mouth. "I'm done running from life. I'm done hiding. If you want me, I'm yours." Tears spilled down her cheeks, the first he'd seen her cry without trying to hide it. "I want you," she whispered. I have wanted you since you knelt beside me in that barn with your shaking hands and your sad eyes. Why, I'm nothing special. You are everything special. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him close, despite the pain it must have caused. You are my second chance, my new beginning, my proof that good men still exist. They held each other in the fading light, two broken people making promises they'd have to fight to keep. Outside, Hanovi waited for an answer he already knew. The ceremony happened 3 days later, when Najoni was strong enough to stand. Ezra understood almost none of it. The words, the rituals, the symbols, all of it unfolded in a language he couldn't speak, in traditions he couldn't name. But he understood the important parts. He understood when Hanovi placed their hands together and bound them with woven cord. He understood when Kuruk blessed them with words that made Najoni weep. He understood when the tribe gathered around them and began to sing, their voices rising into the night sky like prayers made audible. And he understood when Najoni looked at him, his wife now in the eyes of her people, and smiled that rare, transformative smile that made his chest ache. You are stuck with me now, she said. Wouldn't have it any other way. You say that now. Wait until you taste my cooking. Can't be worse than mine. You underestimate me. He laughed. The sound surprised him, foreign after so many years, but somehow right. That night, they lay together under a canopy of stars, her head on his chest, his arms wrapped around her, like he could protect her from everything the world might throw at them. What happens now? He asked. Now we live. She traced lazy patterns on his shirt. We find a place that is ours. We build a home. We learn each other's languages, each other's ways. And if it gets hard, it will get hard. We will fight. We will make mistakes. We will hurt each other without meaning to. She lifted her head to look at him. And then we will forgive. Because that is what love is. Forgiveness over and over every day. I've never been good at forgiveness. Then I will teach you. She settled back against his chest. Just as you will teach me patience. I'm not patient either. Then we will learn together. Ezra stared up at the stars, the same stars that had watched him grieve for 8 years, that had witnessed his slow descent into nothing. But tonight, they looked different. Tonight, they looked like possibilities. Najoni. I love you. She went still against him. Then slowly, she lifted her head again. Say it again. I love you. I don't know when it started or how it happened, but I do. I love you. The smile that broke across her face was brighter than any star. I love you too, Ezra Thornton. She kissed him soft and sure. I love your sad eyes and your shaking hands and your broken heart. I love all of it. Even the parts I haven't shown you yet. Especially those. She curled closer against him. We have lifetime to discover each other. No need to rush. A lifetime. The word had terrified him for 8 years. Now it felt like a gift. Okay, he whispered into her hair. A lifetime then. She was already asleep, her breathing slow and even against his chest. Ezra held her closer and watched the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere out there, Martha and Grace were watching too. He could feel them not as ghosts, but as memories. As love that never died, even when the people who carried it did. I'm not forgetting you, he whispered to them. I'm just making room. The wind stirred across the valley, carrying the scent of sage and wood smoke. And for the first time in 8 years, Ezra Thornton fell asleep without dreaming of fire. 3 months changed everything. They built their home on the edge of both worlds, close enough to Hanovi's camp for protection, far enough from white settlements to avoid most trouble. The cabin was small but sturdy, made with timber that Ezra cut himself and raised with help from warriors who had once watched him with suspicion. Najoni taught him her language word by word, night by night. He taught her his ways, how to plant crops, how to mend fences, how to make the coffee she'd come to love. They fought over small things and forgave each other before sunset. They learned the shape of each other's silences. But some wounds healed slower than others. The forge sat untouched behind their cabin. Ezra had built it in the first month, muscle memory guiding his hands through motions he'd thought forgotten. But he hadn't lit it, couldn't bring himself to strike the match. "You stare at it again," Najoni said one evening, finding him standing in the doorway of the small building. "Just thinking. You think too much." She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. "It is just fire, Ezra. Nothing's ever just fire, not for me." She was quiet for a moment. "Martha and Grace. They died in fire. I've told you the story. You've told me the facts. The story is different." She turned him to face her. "Tell me the story. The one you keep locked inside." "Najoni, I am your wife. Your burdens are my burdens." Her eyes held his without flinching. "Let me carry some of this weight." The words wanted to stay buried. They'd been buried for 8 years deep in the place where Ezra kept everything that hurt too much to touch. But she was looking at him with those fierce, patient eyes. And he realized with a kind of wonder that he wanted to tell her. Wanted someone else to know the full truth finally. The fire started in the kitchen. He began, his voice rough. Martha was making bread. "She did that every night, said the smell helped Grace sleep. I was in the field fixing a fence that could have waited till morning." "You could not have known." "No, but I should have been there." He closed his eyes. "By the time I saw the smoke, the whole cabin was burning. I could hear Grace screaming, calling for me, 'Papa, Papa,' over and over." Najoni's grip on his hands tightened. "I ran inside. Couldn't see anything, just smoke and flames. Found Grace by her voice, grabbed her, got her out." His throat closed. "But she'd breathed too much. Her lungs were full of smoke. She died in my arms while I watched our house burn." "And Martha?" "I tried to go back, tried so many times. But the roof collapsed and the fire was too hot and I couldn't—" His voice broke. "I couldn't save her. I stood there and listened to her screaming and I couldn't do anything." Tears ran down his face. He hadn't cried like this since those first terrible nights alone in the ashes of everything he'd loved. "The worst part," he whispered, "is that I heard her stop. The screaming just stopped. And I knew. I knew she was gone and I was still standing there alive when I should have been inside with her." Najoni pulled him close, holding him while he shook. "You did everything you could. It wasn't enough. It never feels like enough. That is burden of the living." She pulled back enough to look at his face. "But Ezra, listen to me. You did not fail them. The fire took them, not you." "I should have what died with them." Her voice sharpened. "Then you would not be here. We would not have found each other. Grace and Martha would still be gone, and you would be ashes instead of the man I love. Sometimes I think that would have been easier." "Easier for who?" "Not for me." She cupped his face in her hands. "You living, you being here, you loving me, that honors them. That proves their lives mattered. That proves your love for them was real." "I'm so tired of being afraid." "Then stop." She said it simply, like it was the easiest thing in the world. "Light the forge. Make something. Show the fire that it does not own you." "What if I can't?" "Then try again tomorrow, and the day after, and every day until you can." She pressed her forehead to his. "I will be here, every day, waiting." He held her in the fading light, letting her strength seep into the places where his own had given out. "Tomorrow," he said finally. "I'll try tomorrow. That is all I ask." But tomorrow brought something unexpected. A rider appeared at dawn, a young boy from the nearest white settlement, his horse lathered with sweat, his eyes wide with fear. "Please," he gasped, sliding from the saddle. "Please, you gotta help. There's been an accident." Ezra's blood ran cold. "What kind of accident?" "The mill, the Brennan mill. Something caught fire, and Mrs. Brennan's grandson is trapped inside. They sent me to find anyone who could help. The Brennan mill. Sarah Brennan, the widow who'd tried to bring him pie all those months ago. The only person in the settlement who'd ever treated him with kindness. How far? 3 miles, maybe less. Please, mister, he's just a little boy. A little boy. Trapped in a fire. Screaming for someone to save him. Grace's face flashed in his mind. Her small hands reaching for him. Papa, Papa. Ezra, Najoni's voice was steady. You do not have to go. He looked at her. At his wife standing in the doorway of their cabin, her face carefully neutral, but her eyes full of understanding. She knew what this would cost him. She knew, and she was giving him the choice anyway. If I don't go, he said slowly, that boy dies. Others can help. Others who do not carry what you carry. And if they can't, if I'm the only one close enough fast enough. He shook his head. I can't let another child die because I was too afraid. This could break you. Maybe. He crossed to her and kissed her hard and desperate. But not going would break me worse. She grabbed his shirt, pulling him close. Then come back to me. Promise. I promise. He rode faster than he'd ever ridden in his life. The smoke was visible from a mile away, a black column rising against the morning sky. The sound reached him next. Shouting, crashing. And somewhere beneath it all, the high, thin wail of a child in terror. The mill was engulfed when he arrived. Flames poured from every window, the wooden structure groaning as it began to collapse. A crowd had gathered, men with buckets making futile attempts to contain the blaze, women holding each other and weeping. And there in the center of it all stood Sarah Brennan. Her face was streaked with soot and tears, her eyes fixed on the upper window where her grandson had been seen minutes ago. He's still in there, she screamed at the men. Someone has to go in. Please. It's too far gone, ma'am. Anyone who goes in there. I don't care. She tried to rush toward the building. 2 men held her back. That's my grandson. That's my Tommy. Ezra dismounted and pushed through the crowd. Sarah saw him and her eyes went wide. Ezra, what are you? Where was he? What room? The upper floor, the storage room. But you can't, the stairs have already. He was already moving. The heat hit him like a wall. Memories crashed over him. Smoke filling his lungs, flames licking at his skin. Grace's screaming and Martha's silence. His legs wanted to lock. His body wanted to run. But somewhere above him, a child was crying. Ezra plunged into the fire. The interior was chaos. Burning debris everywhere, the floor threatening to give way with every step. He pulled his shirt over his mouth and pushed forward, searching for stairs for any way up. There. A ladder leaning against the wall near the back. Already smoking, but not fully alight. He climbed. The upper floor was worse. Visibility near zero, the smoke so thick he could barely breathe. He dropped to his knees and crawled, calling out between coughs. Tommy! Tommy! Can you hear me? A whimper. Faint but there. He followed the sound, fighting through debris, ignoring the burns forming on his hands and arms. The heat was unbearable. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to save himself, to run. He kept going. The boy was huddled in a corner, a small figure wrapped around himself, his eyes squeezed shut against the horror surrounding him. He couldn't have been more than 5, Grace's age, the age she would have been had she lived. Tommy. Ezra's voice cracked. Tommy, I'm here to help you. The boy's eyes flew open. Terror gave way to desperate hope. Please, he sobbed. Please, I want to go home. I want my grandma. I'm gonna take you to her, but you gotta trust me, okay? Can you do that? A tiny nod. Ezra scooped him up and held him close to his chest, shielding the boy's face with his body. The child wrapped his arms around Ezra's neck and held on with all the strength his small body possessed. Close your eyes, Ezra ordered. Don't open them till I tell you. I'm scared. Me too. He started moving. But we're gonna be okay, I promise. The way back was harder. The ladder had collapsed while he was searching, leaving him with no clear route down. The floor groaned beneath his feet sections, giving way into the inferno below. Think. There. A window. Boarded up, but the boards were old rotted. If he could break through. He kicked. Once, twice, 3 times. The boards splintered outward. Fresh air rushed in, feeding the flames behind him, but giving him a glimpse of salvation. Below the window, men had gathered with a blanket stretched between them. "Jump!" someone shouted. "We'll catch you." It was at least a 15-foot drop. If they missed, if the boy slipped, the floor behind him collapsed with a roar. No choice now. "Hold on tight," he told Tommy. "Don't let go no matter what." "I won't." Ezra jumped. For one endless moment, they were falling. Fire at their backs, earth rushing up to meet them, nothing but air and faith between life and death. Then, arms caught them. Impact drove the breath from Ezra's lungs, but he kept his grip on Tommy, kept the boy protected, even as they tumbled to the ground in a tangle of limbs and blanket. "Tommy!" Sarah was there in an instant, pulling her grandson from Ezra's arms, sobbing and laughing, and covering the boy's face with kisses. "Oh, thank God! Thank God!" Ezra lay on his back in the dirt, staring up at the sky. His hands were burned. His lungs felt like they'd been scoured with sandpaper. Every inch of his body ached. But the boy was alive. The boy was alive. "Mister." A small hand touched his face. Tommy had pulled away from his grandmother and was looking down at Ezra with those big, terrified, grateful eyes. "Mister, are you okay?" "Yeah, kid." Ezra managed a weak smile. "I'm okay. You saved me." Just returning a favor. He didn't know if the boy would understand. Didn't matter. "Someone saved me once too." Sarah knelt beside him, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Ezra Thornton, you foolish, brave, wonderful man." She grabbed his burned hand, ignoring his wince of pain. "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't need thanks. You got it anyway." She helped him sit up, her arms steady around his shoulders. "I heard about your Apache wife. People in town have been talking." "I'm sure they have. Most of what they say is garbage." Her jaw set with determination. "Anyone who can run into a burning building to save a child he's never met is good people. I don't care what color his wife is." "Not everyone shares that opinion." "Then everyone else can go hang." She squeezed his shoulder. "You're welcome in my home anytime, Ezra. You and your wife both." The words hit him harder than he expected. Acceptance. From someone he barely knew. For something he hadn't dared hope for. "Thank you," he said. "That means more than you know." Najoni found him an hour later. He was sitting outside what remained of the mill, his burned hands wrapped in cloth, watching the last embers die. The crowd had mostly dispersed. Tommy and Sarah had gone home, but Ezra couldn't seem to make himself leave. "You went into fire." Najoni's voice was quiet as she sat beside him. "You faced the thing you feared most. Didn't really have a choice. There is always choice." She took his bandaged hand gently in hers. "You chose to be brave." "I was terrified the whole time." "That is what makes it brave." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "The boy is safe because of you. His grandmother will have him for many more years because you would not let fear win." "I kept seeing Grace's face." His voice cracked. "When I found him, when I carried him out, I kept thinking this is what I should have done. This is who I should have been. You were that person 8 years ago too." "I wasn't. I failed." "You did not fail." She cut him off firmly. "You saved your daughter. You carried her out of the fire. She died because of the smoke, not because you were too slow or too scared. There was nothing more you could have done. You don't know that. I know you." She turned his face toward hers. I know the man who ran into a burning building today without a second thought. That man did not suddenly appear from nowhere. He has been here all along, buried under guilt and grief. Ezra's eyes burned with tears. He was too exhausted to shed. I'm so tired, he whispered. Then rest. She pulled him close. Rest and let me carry you for a while. He closed his eyes and let her hold him. They went home as the sun set. Najoni tended his burns with herbs from her people, her hands gentle and sure. She fed him soup and wrapped him in blankets, and refused to let him lift a finger until his body had recovered from the trauma. 3 days later, Ezra walked out to the forge. Najoni watched from the cabin door, but didn't follow. This was something he had to do alone. The forge sat cold and dark, waiting. The tools hung on their hooks untouched since he'd placed them there months ago. The coal sat ready to be lit. Ezra struck the match. His hand shook, his heart hammered. Every instinct screamed at him to drop the flame and run. Instead, he touched it to the kindling and watched the fire catch. The flames grew, orange and gold dancing in the morning light. The forge began to warm, heat radiating outward like a living thing. Fire. The thing that had taken everything from him. The thing that had haunted his nightmares for 8 years. The thing he'd finally stopped running from. Ezra picked up the hammer, heavy, familiar right, and selected a piece of iron from the stack beside the anvil. He thrust it into the flames and waited for it to glow. When it did, he pulled it out and began to work. The rhythm came back slowly. Strike, turn, strike. Again. Shaping raw metal into something useful, something beautiful. The clang of hammer on anvil echoed across the valley, announcing to the world that Ezra Thornton was alive. He worked until his arms ached and sweat dripped down his face. When he finally stopped, he held up what he'd made. A simple thing, a nail barely 3 inches long. Not perfect, his skills had rusted after years of neglect. But it was his, made with his hands. Made with fire. It is beautiful. Najoni had appeared beside him, her eyes shining with pride. It's just a nail. No. She took it from him, turning it over in her palm. It is proof. Proof that you are stronger than your fear. Proof that you can create instead of destroy. Proof that fire does not own you anymore. Ezra looked at the forge still burning. At the tools waiting to be used, at the future spreading out before him full of possibility. Will you teach me? Najoni asked. Your craft. You want to learn blacksmithing? I want to learn everything about you, every piece you have hidden, every skill you have forgotten. She smiled. We have lifetime, remember, a lifetime. The word no longer scared him. All right, he said, but I'm warning you, I'm a terrible teacher. Then we will learn together. She stepped into his arms, and he held her there in front of the burning forge, in front of the future they were building together. 6 months later, Hanovi came to visit. He sat with them beside their cabin, drinking coffee that Najoni had made and eating bread that Ezra had somehow learned not to burn. The old chief's eyes moved between them, taking in the small details of a life built from nothing. You are happy, he said finally. Not a question. We are, Najoni answered. Happier than I knew I could be. Hanavi nodded slowly. And you? He turned to Ezra. Are you happy, white man who saved my daughter? Ezra considered the question. Happy seemed too small a word for what he felt now. Safe, loved, whole. These came closer but still fell short. I'm alive, he said finally. For the first time in 8 years, I'm actually alive. The chief smiled, a rare expression that transformed his weathered face. Then the debt is paid. He rose and placed a hand on Ezra's shoulder. You saved my daughter's life. She saved yours. The spirits are satisfied. I didn't do it for the spirits. I know. That is why they are satisfied. Hanovi left the next morning, but not before pressing something into Ezra's hand. A small carved figure, a man and woman standing together facing outward, protecting each other. "For your home," the chief said, "to remind you that two are stronger than one." Ezra placed it on the mantel that evening next to the first nail he'd forged and the turquoise necklace Najoni had worn on their wedding day. Small things. Simple things. The building blocks of a new life. That night, Najoni found him standing outside, staring up at the stars. "What are you thinking?" she asked, slipping her hand into his. "I'm thinking about how strange life is." He turned to look at her. "A year ago I was waiting to die. I'd given up on everything, hope, love, the future. And then you crawled into my barn bleeding and broken and changed everything. I did not change you. I just reminded you who you already were. Same thing, isn't it?" She considered this. "Perhaps. I never thought I'd feel this way again. After Martha and Grace, I thought that part of me was dead, burned away with them. And now I know it was just sleeping." He pulled her close. "You woke it up." She wrapped her arms around his waist and rested her head against his chest. "I was broken too," she said softly. "Running from a life I did not choose. Fighting for a freedom I was not sure existed. And then I found you, a strange, sad, stubborn man who talked to horses and cried for his dead wife. Doesn't sound very romantic." "It was the most romantic thing I had ever seen." She lifted her head. "You loved them so much that you carried that love for 8 years, even when it was killing you. That kind of love. It does not die. It transforms." "Transforms into what?" "Into this." She gestured at the cabin, the forge, the life they'd built. "Into us. Into everything we will become." Ezra looked at his wife, his fierce, beautiful, impossible wife, and felt something settle in his chest. Peace, maybe, or acceptance. The understanding that some wounds never fully heal, but that was okay. The scars became part of who you were. "I love you," he said. "More than I know how to say." "Then do not say it." She smiled. "Show me. Every day for the rest of our lives." "That's a lot of days." "I am counting on it." She kissed him soft and slow, and he kissed her back with everything he had. Above them, the stars wheeled through the endless sky. The same stars that had watched over Martha and Grace. The same stars that had witnessed his grief and his healing and his rebirth. Somewhere in the darkness, he imagined them watching too. Not as ghosts, but as memories. As the love that had made him who he was, and the love that had shown him who he could become. He wasn't the shy farmer anymore. He wasn't the broken man waiting to die. He was Ezra Thornton, husband, healer, builder of new things. And for the first time in 8 years, that was exactly who he wanted to be. The shy farmer who had hidden an Apache woman in his barn had become something he never imagined possible, a man who was no longer afraid to live, to love, or to face the fires that life would bring.